18 months of time over my head. And at one point, so every day I had to call in to this number to see if it was my day to drug test.
Yeah.
And
the color system?
Yeah.
Oh, so this is just like regular felony probation. It's not like a special nursing.
No, oh, hold on. I am special.
Millie makes songs, hey, I made this one. Jerry builds bikes and they go real fast. They're mental defectives.
Welcome to the Mental Defectives Podcast, a show where we interview interesting individuals with a focus on addiction and mental health. I'm your host, Milligram. That's Millie if you know me, Mr. Graham if you know me. Joined, as always, by the Harry Osborn of Harleys, the gearhead with the heart of gold. It's Mr. Jerry with a G.
I'm glad to be here.
And today we have a very special guest. She is a mother, wife, sober woman, nurse. She can run a 5K backwards and blindfolded. She can test your vitals, but don't test her gangster.
Ooh.
It's Miss Jessica. Jessica, how's it going?
Hey, thank you. Happy to be here.
Appreciate you coming on.
Slightly honored and offended at the same time.
That's exactly what we're going for.
Absolutely.
I want every guest to be honored
and offended. I love that.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes. That is the tagline of your episode. Thank you so much. That's
You're
just
welcome.
like 12
Offended.
minutes of editing. Jessica, where are you from?
Okay, to make a long story short, I was born in Worcester, Ohio. Fun fact, I was the largest baby born in 1984, coming in at 12 pounds. So I was born in Worcester, but we moved around a lot growing up. I call Beaver Creek, Ohio, my hometown.
Okay.
That I lived there twice, actually, but I graduated from Findlay High School, northwest.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, the biggest baby thing's got me.
It's really, you really threw Jerry for a loop
you really
there.
got me there. You said 12 pounds?
12 pounds.
The biggest
but
baby in your county or?
in Worcester. I'm
in
assuming the
Worcester,
county.
okay.
Yeah, I'm assuming the county.
Oh, so the biggest out of 25 babies.
I was
That's
at
not
9 pounds, but 12, wow.
And
Yeah.
neither of you were like big people.
We were healthy
Thank
children.
you for that. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, so growing up, we lived in Worcester just for a hot second for me to be born, but my childhood was pretty traditional. I come from two parents that are still married. Every year we went on family vacations. I have two younger brothers. I'm the oldest and the only daughter. So really the only abnormal thing about my childhood was we moved often. Mm-hmm. My dad is a mechanical engineer and he worked for the oil companies. So about every 2 to 3 years we moved to a different town.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
And when did you first pick up drinking?
Okay, so I learned early how to be a chameleon because I had to move and make new friends.
Sure.
My first drink was when I was 12 or 13 when we were living in Beaver Creek. I found friends that's what they did on the weekends. We drank. Drugs came into the equation pretty quick, smoking weed, playing around with pills. Chlorocidin was like our thing to do when we went to the bowling alley. We would hang out at the bowling alley.
Hit those triple C's in the bowling alley?
It's the worst. Yeah, the worst.
As a 12-year-old in the Midwest, that sounds amazing.
Right.
As a grown adult, that sounds like
It
a
was awful.
fucking nightmare.
Horrible.
In fact, the only times my parents ever confronted me about being under the influence was when I was on chlorocidin.
Sure.
That tracks.
Yeah.
And like growing up, we never had that talk. I love my parents. They're amazing. They're super supportive, but they're also very codependent. We never had that talk. Don't do that. And as long as my grades were okay, I looked okay, everything was fine. So I knew just to keep my grades up, and I kind of got away with whatever I wanted.
Nice.
So like when I first started using, nothing magical happened. I felt like I finally fit in. I always felt like my mind was either going 100 miles an hour ahead of people or behind people, and drugs and alcohol just kind of like dumbed me down to just be.
Yeah.
And with that first group of people is where I met a boy named Phil. He'll come up a lot. Phil was kind of also one of my first drugs of choice. And so when I first started,
sorry to interrupt. Sorry to interrupt you. Jerry, Phil was one of your big drugs of choice too, wasn't he?
Second, yes.
I knew it. Okay.
Yeah, it was.
Sorry about that. Continue.
Phil was a big deal.
Yeah, so that was 8th grade. Up until 8th grade, I was involved in theater and volleyball. But once I discovered the easier option to drink and get high to fit in with the group, I just kind of switched. Kept my grades up, like I said. And then we moved to Findlay, Ohio when I was a junior in high school. And that was like the end of my world.
That was a tough time to move
It was
at
an
like
awful
16,
time.
17. Like,
I finally found my group. I was
Right.
dating a boy. So when we moved to Findlay, Findlay High School also had open lunch at the time. And so the first people I ran into on my first day were the smokers hanging out at the corner. So I just got in with that group at Findlay High School. Kept picking up with a new group there. Spent my weekends driving down to Beaver Creek to hang out with Phil and my friends from Beaver Creek. And then when it came time, I actually graduated because, like I said, as long as I kept my grades up, everything was cool. And so when I graduated high school, I wanted to go on to become an actress. And my dad was like, no, you need to get a real job. So he said, I think you should be a nurse. And so naturally, Wright State University has a nursing school, and they're right next to Beaver Creek. So that's what I chose. And so I started college, and Phil was still living down there. And in college, I had a roommate my first year, and our stuff just started randomly coming up missing. And I didn't know this, but her dad was a police officer, so they actually bugged our room. And to make a long story short, it was Phil who was stealing our stuff. And I remember one time Phil took my car. He was gone for like 3 days. And Phil came from a broken home. I thought, I was going to fix him.
oh, sure.
It hasn't been till recovery that I discovered who I am. When I was out there, I needed people, places, and things to tell me who I was.
Yeah.
So, whatever Phil did, I went. And when he stole my car, he came back all beat up. And that's when I found out he was doing heroin. And my first thought was, well, I got to do heroin,
Naturally.
Naturally.
Yeah.
And the first few times I did it, I hated it. I puked my guts out for like an hour. But I just kept doing it until I liked it a lot. And then I just kind of blamed it on Phil. Like, I'm doing this for Phil. I grew up in the suburbs. I come from a good family. I'm smart. I'll get out of this. I'm just here right now because of Phil.
Just a little pit stop.
Yeah, a little pit stop.
Right.
And actually, my whole life through adulthood, I've kind of like seen myself as this, unique, terminally unique, always. And in college, I just kind of thought this was like a case study of what heroin addiction looks like. And what didn't help was in my, I was in a European literature class, and we were reading the book Trainspotting.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, nice.
And if you haven't seen the movie, it's all about heroin addiction. So I thought, like, how cool is this? I'm reading about it and I'm living it. So that was fun until it wasn't. And then I always assumed it was only because of Phil. Well, then Phil ended up going to prison for 2 years. And so when I was still in college, I learned, like, that day when he got arrested, I was shooting myself up that afternoon. It didn't take long to figure it out. And with Phil out of the equation, I was free to do whatever it took to get more. So found myself in some pretty nasty situations. And I did think I was a genius at the time because I created a few schemes. And I thought I was the first to come up with those. So I had this dorm in a car, and I would willingly just live in my car so I could be closer to the stores when I woke up, so then I could do what I needed to do, go get more. And that was my life. And then I was still in nursing school, and I actually failed out because I had this massive abscess on my arm, and they wouldn't let me come to clinical until it healed up. And I remember after I failed, I sat in my car in the parking lot for like an hour just sobbing because the gig is up, my parents are going to have to know my grades went down, and when I was living with them, I had to worry about my appearance. And then when I went to college, I no longer had to worry about my appearance, but I still had to keep my grades up.
Yeah.
So when the grades left, I had nothing left.
Did the school question where the abscess came from?
No.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Especially a
They
nursing
just-
school.
Right.
You think they would be
Yeah.
pretty, like,
What's that all about?
Yeah.
Now I am old, so I would like to think. So this was back in 2003. So maybe times have changed, and maybe they would offer me help today. But no, at the time they just failed me. So my parents found out. I don't know how it came about, but well, probably just because I had a massive abscess on my arm and I couldn't really make up excuses anymore. But they sent me to rehab, my first rehab, and I personally loved rehab. You know, I got away from the pressures of college. My bank account was negative. They made it positive. I met new friends. I got smoke breaks. And so when I came out of there, I didn't really suffer any consequences other than failing. But my parents moved me back home to Findlay for a summer to clean me up. And I was going back in the fall. And in that summer, though, so the thing about Findlay back in the early 2000s is you couldn't find heroin, but you could find a lot of crack. And so
Interesting.
Yeah.
For such a small town, that's like seems like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Couldn't find any heroin back then, so I just switched to crack when I got out of my first rehab. And, you know, that whole summer was just full of antics. And now that I was living with my parents, they knew about my drug problem. So I kind of just, you know, balls to the walls. And I would take their car. One time I took their car and was gone a couple days, and I ran out of money. So I was starting to do some things to get more. And sometime in the process, my lung collapsed from smoking too much.
Ooh.
Wow.
And holding your breath and coughing is a way to collapse your lung. So PSA, don't hold your breath and cough at the same
Kids,
time.
if you're smoking crack, don't hold
Don't
your
do
breath
that.
and cough. Don't do that in the first place.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Especially if you're smoking crack.
Yes.
Right. And I went to go get more from this guy, and he heard me wheezing, and he's like, "Girl, get the fuck out of here." And I had never been turned down by a drug dealer before.
Sure.
So I went home, and I told my parents, I think I burnt my lung. I thought I burned it. So anyways, I got hospitalized, and my lung reinflated. But it was just like this vicious cycle of them finding me in a bad way, putting me in a 2-week rehab. I'd come out, do the same thing over and over and over. Towards the end of summer, I think I went to 3 rehabs that summer. But I knew I needed to get back to school, because in my head, if I just became a nurse, if I just graduated, I'm going to be okay. I just have to get there.
Yeah.
So I cleaned up enough to get back to school.
And you never like during that summer like went back to heroin at all?
Well, immediately moving back to college, because then I was back in the Dayton area.
Oh,
where
yeah.
I could- yeah.
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
think that's so great. Like I never once thought to like switch.
Switch.
Yeah, that's
I
crazy.
never.
Interesting.
I've discovered my drug of choice is more,
Oh, there you
Sure.
go. Yeah. That makes
and
sense.
Yeah.
it's whatever is not sober.
Right.
So when I was back with my parents, that's all I could find. So it was just alcohol and crack. And then when they moved me back to college, I picked right back up. I think this was about time that this new miracle drug that was going to cure everybody's problems came out on the market. And so my first time, when my parents moved me back to school, by this time my parents knew I had failed. You know, I'd done all the things that I thought I couldn't do, or else I'd be in a bad way. So I started actually wanting to try and be sober, but I didn't want to stop picking up. I just wanted to stop.
What a fun
Yeah.
place to be.
Oh yeah, that's the best.
I wanted to stop getting in trouble, you know?
Yeah.
I just want to smoke crack and shoot dope without
Like,
consequences. What's the big deal?
I know.
Right.
Get off my back. And at this point, I couldn't have a checking account either, because I was in check systems from check fraud.
Oh yeah.
So I was really struggling on how to get any, because I just was on a cash basis, and who can hold on to much cash? So when I went into, I've been to rehab 9 times, so I don't know how many times in this was, but there was this clinic down in Dayton that I could check myself in for free. It was through the county, and they put you on Suboxone. And that was just amazing, you know. And I had been introduced to 12-step program a 12-step program by this point, and I would go and I would listen and I would leave. Or I would go and I would meet people, find out what their drug of choice was, and try something different. I just really thought that I was in this phase and I was going to grow out of it. I'm too smart to listen to these people. It doesn't apply to me. And I got really hung up on single substances being listed out. Like, I don't have a problem with that. This doesn't apply to me.
Yeah.
I haven't lost my job. I don't have one. You know, I haven't lost my family. I don't have one. So I really just thought I would just grow up. And yeah, so Suboxone truly became like a major crutch for me. I won't go on like a big soapbox about it, but for me, I was untreated in my addiction, and so I misused Suboxone like I did any other drug. And by the grace of God, though, my last treatment, Phil got out of prison right before I graduated college. Graduation was in sight. It was like 6 months before the time was coming. So I knew I just had to get there, and I was going to be okay. I was going to move out of Dayton. I was going to get a real job, and I was going to be fixed. And Phil got out of prison, and I gave him, you know, an ultimatum, like either, because we would do that cycle of him relapsing, and then I'd go back out, or I'd go back out, and then he would go back out. So when it came closer to graduation, it was like, listen, you can come with me, but we have to stay sober. So at that point, we both were just on Suboxone and taking it like we were supposed to. And then somehow I graduated and became a nurse.
That is mind-blowing.
Yeah.
I'm always shocked when people can, like, make it through college, like, start a company while still, like, in active addiction, let alone, like, nursing school. That seems like
no shit.
It's like you're a communications major, no
Yeah.
offense. I'm poli-sci, so I'm like one step, like a half a third step above that, if not below.
The Mental Defectives podcast is brought to you by Milligram's new EP, More is Always Better. 6 electrifying tracks available on all streaming platforms.
Honestly, when I first got sober, I used that. Like, I went through nursing school on heroin most of the time. Like, sky's the limit. Like, obviously.
Fucking rock star.
Yeah, obviously, I'm a genius, you know?
yes.
Clearly, yes.
And, like I said, that terminally unique, you know? And I graduated, got a job in Columbus. So I was like, here's my ticket. I'm getting out of here.
I'm in
fixed.
the big city.
I'm good to go, you know? I was still going to some of my 12-step meetings, but I wasn't engaged. I wasn't doing the deal like they explained it for you to do. I was doing it my way. I was taking my maintenance drug. I had my boyfriend at the time, and I had my degree, you know? And I started working as a nurse. And, you know, to me, that was as close to sober as possible. I would smoke a little weed here and there. I would drink here and there, take my medicine. And that, to me, was sober because I wasn't, you know, injecting or smoking crack.
Yeah.
So it was a step in the right direction, I guess. But, you know, you don't get partial credit for an addict and alcoholic like myself. And so it didn't take very long, you know. Like I said, I've required people, places, and things to tell me who I was. So here I am working. So now I'm a nurse. So that's what I'm going to do. And it worked until it didn't. You know, I always need more. So about a year and a half into my career, I met a man at work, and he filled a void that I didn't know I had. So I bring up my relationships because I've realized now that I used men in relationships just like I used drugs. And it was always to fill this void within myself that I didn't want to look at. And so for a while there, I had a boyfriend, 2 boyfriends actually. And Phil asked me to marry him in the process, and I said yes because like a good alcoholic, I don't know how to say no. So I got married. I had a boyfriend.
You'd
I was.
say, wait, yes, I'll marry you, but let me run it by my boyfriend first.
Hold on. Yeah, hold on.
Yeah.
I don't know what he thinks. Well, actually, I'll tell you what he thought because he was married, so he didn't mind.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
there you I mean, there.
He didn't mind one bit.
Right.
And so at work, I also got promoted So in my head, like, life is good. I'm getting all the things that I never had. What could possibly go wrong here? I got married. And then in my job, so that affair I was having, just like drugs and alcohol, like, it's never going to be enough. It started out one thing, and then it was just, I need more. At one point, both of our spouses, like, within the same month, got diagnosed with the same type of cancer.
Damn.
What?
So I haven't really brought up my higher power much, but prior to recovery, I didn't really know how to have a relationship with one. I just kind of assumed I'm either doomed or I'm going to get out of it, and that's that. I never really had, like, this contact with any kind of power other than myself on a day-to-day basis. But when that situation happened and they both got diagnosed with the same cancer, I thought, that's God. He's going to take them both out, and we're going to be together for the rest of our lives. And I can see it, like, in hindsight, it's like I was the cancer and I was spreading.
Ooh.
Damn.
And luckily, both of them are fine, I think. I don't know. I don't talk to the one living amends. But throughout that affair, it kept getting more and more out of control. Like, my job, I was in a leadership position at the hospital. I kept getting write-ups for... I actually just found it when I was cleaning out my old apartment not too long ago. I got written up for internet use. I was Googling too many hotels. Because I would request time away. It's not you, it's me. And then I'd stay in a hotel. So it came to a head, and I guess rumors started, and I was asked to step down from my position or sign an agreement to say I wouldn't have contact with this individual. So I left. I quit. So I quit and moved hospitals thinking, I'll just get out of this situation. And so at that hospital, I was maintaining my multiple relationships, and then my marriage. I know this is going to be surprising, but it was failing, and it was coming to an end. And we were living...
And you're still Suboxone, weed, and alcohol at this point?
Yeah,
Okay.
still Suboxone, weed, and alcohol. And randomly showing up to meetings if I felt like it. But, because by osmosis. And at the new job, I was there for about a year when so Phil started requesting that he got to see people, because he found out about my affair multiple times. And I downloaded all the ghost apps. There's a lot of apps out there to text. And it was just it's crazy to me to think about, like, the lengths I went to maintain all those lies.
It's a full-time job.
It was a full-time job.
Yeah.
And instead of living in my car to use, I was living in my car just to get away from, like, all the fallout of my actions. And so marriage was failing. Boyfriend was starting to say things like, I need to go back and work on things with my wife. I was losing the things that make me know who I am. My doctor at the same time was saying, it's time we get you off Suboxone. So I was just living in so much fear of this unknown, because I didn't know how to do life without Phil, without Suboxone. Now my boyfriend, my job just changed. So I have all these, things that are changing up on me. And the thing about nursing, though, is it ended up, even though it was my dad's suggestion, it ended up being, like, the perfect job for me, because I can focus on other people's problems. And when I get home, I can say I'm too tired. I could just deal with other people's drama and pretend like I'm doing, all I can. And at this new job, there was a national shortage of a medication. And what that meant was instead of taking out little doses, we had to take out big doses. And you're supposed to waste what you don't use. You're supposed to draw it up in a syringe. You're supposed to grab a witness and waste the rest of it. I came up with this great idea. I'll just take the rest instead of wasting it. So I started with, it's diverting is what they call it. So I started diverting a narcotic, and I had this great plan. I was going to save up my narcotics to use at home, and use Suboxone at work, and then I was going to wean myself off the Suboxone and Dilaudid. You know, I had it made sense.
It's a foolproof plan.
I mean, it made perfect sense to me.
And are there cameras in these areas of the hospital? Like, I'm assuming like in a med room where there's like narcotics, they have like cameras and stuff, or is that?
Well,
you kind of have carte blanche as like, I'm an employee, this is what I'm doing, like.
Yep. Yes, but I worked in the ER, and the ER is like the Wild Wild West.
Okay. Okay.
So there are cameras, but they're more geared towards like watching the patients do crazy shit.
Right.
And so there, I did a lot of things to get people to co-sign my bullshit unwillingly. And I was able to pull it off for a couple months. You know, like they talk about your addiction doing push-ups in the parking lot. I had never really stopped using because I was still using medication and weed and alcohol. But as soon as I put that opiate in me, I was right back where I left off. So it started out, I'll just take this one. And what I would do is my doctor was cutting my Suboxone dose. So I was feeling a little bit of that withdrawal. So I would double up on my work days of Suboxone and then go cold turkey and just inject Dilaudid at home. And I did that for maybe a week. And
that's a dangerous
I was
game.
gonna
If
say,
you time that wrong, you are
I
full.
was gonna say like precipitated withdrawal or whatever.
I didn't do a great job every time. Oops. Yeah, I didn't do a great job every time. I actually had like a little pharmacy bag I would carry. I had at home with some other meds to kind of counteract
my God.
other
Hunter S.
things.
Thompson over
Yeah,
here.
right.
And that's for you kids out there. If a fucking nurse can't do it, why do you think you can do it? You can't.
Right.
I'm a fucking genius. So it didn't work. And it didn't work. So like I said, like that went on for like a week before I was signing up for shifts on my off days so that I could be there all the time to steal all the time. And this one, and actually my boyfriend found out what I was doing, so he came over and he brought me a bag of weed to get me to stop, because he wanted me to just smoke and not steal drugs.
Right.
God bless him.
I know, he tried. And after about a month, during that time, I had a couple God smacks, I call them, you know, God looking over my shoulder saying, hey, quit that shit. And I got caught a few times, like with documentation, because I was forging stuff. And I got out of it. But what I couldn't get out of is I took medications out on somebody who had passed away like the day before. And so when they went to charge the patient, they saw that I had taken it out after they died.
Yeah.
And they started asking questions, and I didn't have answers. And I was a charge nurse at the time, and so they called me when I was I worked night shift. So
What is a charge nurse?
You're like the head bitch in charge, if you will, for the shift. And you're not a manager, so you don't have to like deal with reviews and managing people, but you just kind of watch the flow. Motherfuckers gotta listen
to what you got to
say.
say.
You watch the flow of the unit. You assign patient rooms and stuff, and you cover for lunch breaks. And they were having a charge. They called me on my day off and said, actually, so let me back up a little bit. It was New Year's Eve night, and I could feel the weight of the world crushing down on me. And I knew I could not keep this up. I was getting tired, sick and tired of being sick and tired, but not knowing how to stop. And I said a prayer in my car. I said, please let me just use this one time, and then I'll stop. So I went in, I used that time, and then I came back the next night and I used again. And I remember, like, on New Year's Day when I did that, like, I just knew. Like, after, it was just the feeling that it's over. And sure enough, January 2nd is when they called me at home and said, hey, we're having a charge nurse meeting this afternoon. Can you attend? And I knew something was going down, so I grabbed, I bought a fake bag of urine, and went into that meeting prepared to give a drug test. And they brought me straight into HR and fired me. So, and when they confronted me, they had all the heads of the departments there, and they pulled my records, and I had stolen like over 200 counts of Dilaudid. And my boss at the time asked me if I was stealing to then sell to pay for Phil's cancer treatment. And I went with that for a minute, and then I just got pissed off and angry. I was in my master's program also at the attached school. So when they confronted me, you can't catch me. I'm the charge nurse. I'm in my master's program. I had all these reasons like why you can't fire me. But they did. And at the time they said, we're not going to press charges, but and then they listed off like 7 identities of different people that could press charges down the road. So,
who are these people that?
So like the Board of Pharmacy, the Board of Nursing, the Board of Medicine, Columbus, Franklin County. So there was a lot of the hospital wasn't going to charge me, but they did have to submit the evidence of what happened.
Damn.
Holy shit. Okay, so they say you're fired. We're not going to press charges, but we have to submit this evidence to all these different officiating bodies, and any one of them or all of them could come after you at a later date, but we don't know.
Right.
That is fucking terrifying.
Have a nice day.
Yeah. Fuck that.
Yeah. And when I got home, the first thing I did was I Googled, what does a nurse do when caught stealing? And a lot of forums popped up, and one of the threads was talking about how she then got into travel nursing. So then you go from state to state, and by the time the charges catch up to you, you've moved on to a different state.
Sure.
And I thought about that for a second, but it ultimately sounded like too much work. And
it's like low-key going on the run.
Right.
Yeah.
Like living on the lamb.
Yeah. And I don't know why. For once in my life, I got honest, and I actually called the Board of Nursing on myself, and I reported it. There's a statement out there. I'm so glad I was honest. But I willingly gave up my license at that time, and they said, thank you. We'll send you information on an upcoming trial to see what your fate is. And so now I didn't have a job.
Criminal or for your nursing license?
For my nursing license, yeah. So that's all they care about. Well, actually, no, they do care about the criminal charges, but that's a separate. So I called to report myself for my license. Good question. And so now I don't have a job. Phil wants a divorce. My boyfriend came over right after I got fired, left me $200 on the table, and said, good luck. So he left me. My doctor had taken me off Suboxone by this point. She thought I was successfully off of it. She didn't know about my genius plan, about the Dilaudid taper. And I checked myself into Talbot Hall, and I actually left after like 2 days, because what blows is like withdrawing off Suboxone and Dilaudid when they give everybody Suboxone. So like I was feeling like ass, and I was sick of everybody being in a good mood because they were on Suboxone. So I just left, and I detoxed at home. And when I was detoxing at home, I recognized how helpful alcohol can be in the process of not being able to sleep. So I just started drinking at my apartment. And I didn't really know what was going to happen, obviously. I knew I needed a job. Tax returns were coming, thankfully, so that's the only way I didn't end up homeless. My parents are super supportive, and I did call my dad immediately, and I told him everything, and they were willing to help. At the time, they were living in Chicago, though. So I was trying to figure out my shit so I could stay in my apartment. And I came across a ad for a job that just was looking for nursing experience. It didn't mention patient care. It didn't mention needing a license. So I just took a chance and I applied. And, God blessed me with that opportunity, and I'm still there today. So I found a job that loved my background but didn't need me to legally be able to take care of patients. And when I started that job, I was now living corporate life. I went from night shift in the ER to working 9 to 5, happy hours, business dinners, and I was single. So I had to start dating, of course.
You had to.
And
You had to.
I did start going back to 12-step meetings, but like I said, I'm terminally unique and I don't have a problem with a certain substance. So I didn't think the rules applied to me. So I was attending these meetings. I was following the rules outside of the willingness to stop drinking. So I was continuing to drink and putting on the facade of sobriety and going to my job. I signed up for a bunch of online dating sites. In my drinking, and now I was off Suboxone. I was really proud of that accomplishment. Never mind the fact that I just substituted it with alcohol. But when I first started dating, it would start out like just drinking at dinner. And then it started to be drinking while I'm getting ready, drinking at dinner. And then it was, I'm going to drink while I'm getting ready. I'm going to stop at the gas station for a drink for the car. And then I'm going to drink at the bar. And then I just started blacking out every single time. I drank maybe 2-3 times a week. But it was all I obsessed about the whole week leading up to it. And when I started blacking out, I started waking up in places that I don't remember how I got there. I would wake up to notes from people that I don't remember meeting. And I started trying to like control it. I remember I was starting to think maybe I have an issue with alcohol, and there was this happy hour coming up for work. And so I decided I'm only going to have one drink at that happy hour. I decided that like a week before it actually happened.
As all normal drinkers do.
Right. And that day I fasted the whole day so that my one drink would have maximum
make that
impact.
Right, yeah.
I had a double Long Island. It's only one. It only counts as one. And I finished it so quick, and then I was just sitting there with a bunch of women talking about Instapots and Instagram and Pinterest, and I just wanted to die.
My eyes are already glazing over once I heard Instapot and Pinterest.
And I, it's then that I realized how true one is too many and 1,000 is never enough, as a saying I've heard. And I went home that night. I didn't drink anymore. I didn't use anything. I just cried myself to sleep because I wasn't drunk. I wasn't sober. And, but at the end of the day, I only had one. So that wasn't enough for me to think maybe I have an issue. So I kept going. And, now I'm in my little dating phase. And like I only bring it up because I can see now how I used it as just another way to get outside of myself, just like I did with drugs. And this continued on for a few more months. And then in January 2014, I had 3 dates lined up. I had a date at lunch. I had a date in the afternoon. I had a date at dinner. And then another guy randomly called me after that third one and wanted me to meet up. I had drank at every single one. And I remember my friend called me when I was on my way out the door to the 4th stop. And she said, "What are you doing?" And she was like trying to reprimand me for going out. And I was like, "I married my high school sweetheart, and then now we're not together. Like, this is my time." And I was like, you know how the saying goes, go big or go home. And she's like, go home. Like, stay home. Yeah. And I didn't listen. So I went out and I crashed my car on the center divide of 315. Ooh. And there was an ambulance right behind me. And so they pulled over. I was trying to get my car over to the side because I was right by the 161 exit. So I was trying to push it off to the exit. And, the ambulance people are like, "Get back in the car. Help is on the way." And I said, "It's okay. I got it." And within a few minutes, cops arrived. I got charged with a DUI. And the whole time I was arrested, I was just sitting there telling them, I was like, I'm a nurse. I'm going to be 30. I had all these, I live in Dublin. Like, you can't arrest me.
Right.
And they're like, "Oh, but we can." And we did. And then when I woke up the next morning, like, it still hadn't dawned on me because not everybody that gets a DUI has a problem with drinking. So I was like, you don't have a problem with drinking. You just can't drink and drive. And you totaled your car last night. So now you don't have a car. So let's try this again. So that night I tried again to control my drinking. I said I was going to stop drinking by 8. I blacked out by 7:30, woke up to another random fucking note that I don't remember. And that morning that I woke up was what I call like my first big awakening, you know, and it finally was starting to sink in a little bit. I keep changing all of my circumstances, but I keep taking me with me and nothing's changing. So maybe it's time to start looking at me. And that week I started going to my 12-step program again, and I actually started getting honest this time. And that's my sobriety date, January 27th, 2014. That week was a shit show because I had my DUI. I was getting divorced. And then, surprise, I received certified mail. And it was a summons for felony charges for drug theft. So I am technically a convicted felon, although my charges came in the mail to my house. And I just had to appear for my court date. So my first 6 months of sobriety was on just court date after court date after court date after court date. And I'm so blessed to have the people that I've met in sobriety there for me because I didn't have a license. People showed up and took me. And so my DUI was one thing. I did get my license back, but I had to have the breathalyzer on my car. And I could only go to and from work and to and from 12-step meetings, and the drug theft. So the way the charge was written, I was being charged with taking 1 Percocet. So when I first read it, I was like, well, I didn't. I took 212 vials of Dilaudid. And so I thought we were going to go in and win this shit, you know? Not guilty.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, not
guilty. Here's a 20. Keep the change and fuck off.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But my lawyer's like, no, that's their way of being nice. This is what we call a plea, and you're going to plead guilty. And I was devastated because I really thought we were just going to say not guilty because I didn't do that.
Right.
But I
just did these 220 other things.
Yeah. And so we took the plea, and I was entered into a specialty docket, they call it drug court. And so for 2 years, I had to report weekly, do random drug tests. I had a PO and report to this support group, and then a couple other things on the side. But so I was in drug court my first 2 years. The consequences never kept me sober, but I do credit that to giving me enough fear because I had 18 months of time over my head. And at one point, so every day I had to call in to this number to see if it was my day to drug test.
Yeah.
And
the color system?
Yeah.
Oh, so this is just like regular felony probation. It's not like a special nursing.
No, hold on. I am special. Now,
Excuse me.
I haven't gotten to that part of the story, okay? When I was on basic probation, I called it, my window was from 1 to 3 or something crazy. And I missed it by 1 minute a couple times. And the judge called for a revocation hearing. So they were going to revoke my probation. And before I was all prepped and ready, I was looking up my phone records. I pulled my meetings off my Outlook to see how important I am and where I was that day, because they don't know who I am.
No.
And when I showed up to the hearing, I had done the math. I think my compliance rate was 94%. That's passing. And the judge,
It's an A-. That's good. That's good.
The judge, he didn't say it, but you could tell he was just shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
Right.
He did tell me, do you ever sit down and shut up? And so I did. And honestly, that hearing is kind of what... So I was technically sober, but I was still just white-knuckling, trying to control every minor detail. Somebody messed up and told me because I'm not a high-risk demographic in drug court, I'll probably graduate early. And so every day I was emailing the PO, when can I phase up? When's this over? What can I do for extra credit? And that hearing, though, and listening to the judge, I finally heard what I needed to hear. And so I sat down and shut up. And I did that in my meetings too. I started sitting down and shutting up. And so I do credit, like I said, the consequences never kept me sober, but like having experiences like that is what guided me to where I am today. And I've learned I am the problem. I am my worst enemy. And my sponsor, one of my first sponsors told me, no one's too dumb to get this, but people outthink themselves into dying all the time.
Oh, yeah.
And, that's all I was doing. I was trying to create my own way. And the only thing I wasn't doing is just following some simple suggestions other people were telling me to do. So I started doing that. And lo and behold, slowly but surely, training wheels started falling off. And I thought for sure I was going to drink again after that breathalyzer came off my car. But then I didn't. And then, like, I would tell myself things, well, after I stop drug testing, that's when I'll really go back out, But then I didn't, and once I really adapted that whole one day at a time mindset versus, like, looking at my life holistically, like, I can figure this out, things just started happening. And I know for me, it took willingness and honesty, and my higher power and other people have helped me got the rest of the way. Okay, so I got off of basic drug court. And then for the board of nursing, to get my license back, I knew I had to do like 500 million things.
Because this is like a lengthy... We were in a meeting like a month ago, and someone was in that same position. You like pulled them to the side afterwards, and then I just like walked away. Because like, this is gonna be a 45-minute conversation of like
all the things you got to do.
9,000 steps, and I'm sure a shit ton of money.
Yeah, a lot of money. The thing about basic felony probation is you don't have. Maybe it was looped into my restitution, maybe not. But I know I didn't have to pay every time I drug tested, you know, and so. For the board of nursing, they have their own version of probation. They basically own all my health history, and anytime I go to see the doctor now, I have to communicate with the board. I still have to check in daily. If I have to drug test, I drug tested yesterday, actually. I now pay out of pocket for those drug tests. And everybody's probation is different. But the good news is I got my license back. I just have to do it under their terms.
Right.
And thank God for drug court to condition me to sit down and shut up, because the board doesn't fuck around.
Sure.
They wouldn't. They don't care how special I am, how smart I am, or where I live. I just have to do the things. So I've done the things, and I'm actually coming up on in May next year. I'll be off nursing probation, and I'll just I'll just be a basic nurse again. And
that's great.
I am hopeful to maybe go back and get my master's degree. So we'll see what happens. But I'm very blessed today to still enjoy the work I'm doing. And, so since I've been sober, I was very busy with my legal fallouts.
Because this is at the 10-year mark.
Yeah.
Just getting off of like
10 years
nursing
sober.
I'm
still peeing when people tell me to. And watching when they want to.
You're right. Sure.
Yeah.
How many years was that whole process from starting?
5.
Okay, so it took you 5 years to get the nursing license back.
Yeah, and you know what I should have done, and somebody suggested it to me, is start it when I was on regular probation.
Oh.
Because I was already conditioned to do it. But I'm grateful I did wait, because I'm at a point in my life where I know what I want. Early in sobriety, I was still full of fear. I was still full of, I got this.
Oh, yeah.
Angry. So I'm sure I would have fucked it up by now. So I'm grateful the way it played out. But it is an awkward feeling to get a paper slip signed at a meeting at 10 years sober.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. They don't know who I am. Don't judge me. I'll put my paper out and make sure they see the board of nursing at the top.
Like, I'm important, motherfucker.
I know things. But so I got my license back. That's been awesome. And recovery is such a ride, man. It's amazing how much I hate feelings. I still do. But like when I was using and drinking, If I was happy, that's a good time to use. If I was sad, that's a good time to use. If I was anxious, that's a good time to use. And like just going with the flow, it's like its own drug itself, you know? When I first got sober, I looked at sobriety as a drug I hadn't tried yet. And that helped me, honestly, because I know they're not going anywhere. I can always go back, but I don't know if I have another recovery in me. With the rate I was going, I'm most certain I would die this time. And some amazing things have happened to me in my life. For one, being sober, I get to be present. Like you texted me and said, be here at this time, and I showed up. Like, that's pretty cool.
I asked nicely if she would be willing to come on our show and if she could make it here by X whatever time I said. I didn't tell her.
Hold on. I'm busy. Let me see. Let me check my schedules. I'm important.
Don't you know who she is?
Yeah, she was very gracious.
And, like, my character defects, if you will, or what makes me a very mentally unstable individual at times.
A mental defective, perhaps?
Perhaps.
Mental defective, perhaps?
Yeah, I credit my unmedicated anxiety for getting me a lot of cool things in sobriety, but I know that's also what kept me out there for so long. Sure. And when I look at my personality, like all the traits that made me so sick and insane and psychotic are the same traits I'm relying on today. I'm just using them more in harmony with life, and I'm not adding drugs and alcohol to it. You know, like I'm a codependent. Well, that makes me an awesome mom. That makes me an awesome nurse. That makes me a good wife, I think. You know, those kinds of traits. Or like I can be obsessive, but that also makes me dedicated. So that's why I do stupid shit like sign up for marathons. And, you know, life kept lifing after I got sober. And I never had... I hear people come out of rehab talking about this pink cloud about how fucking awesome life is now that they're sober. I hated life when I got sober. I thought it got worse because I had to deal with feelings. I had to deal with fallout. And I was just so angry that I lost my best friend in crutch in drugs and alcohol. And I, like through that anger came that like conclusion to just let go, and that's when I started to get more of a pink cloud. Now, like when I walk out of here tonight, I'll be like, that was awesome, because I can appreciate connecting to people today. And like the biggest gift for me of being a sober person is the ability to connect to people. Because I didn't have that before. There was always a buffer between me and them. And you know, life, I've had some losses in my life, and like within my family, just over the past couple years, I've seen 3 alcohol related deaths, like 2 involving like my young cousins in their 30s. And to see like life snuffed out like that, and to think I was willingly putting myself in a position to just let it happen at any point. Like I just have this newfound appreciation of, I'll be 40 on Thursday, and I'm not sad about it. You know, like I've outlived so many people already.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I am blessed to still be here and still get old today. Yeah, and in recovery, working on my ability to have relationships, speaking of, I was able, through a lot of work on myself, and, you know, just because I got sober didn't mean I got smart about how to date. So I was still pretty stupid with my decisions for a couple years. But through some work and some patience on both me and my husband's part, I was able to meet my husband, who I'm married to today, and you know, we've built this amazing life, and I'm blessed to have like an awesome partner. I'm not there to save him. He's not here to save me. It's just together we help build each other up. And we've been through some shit, and it's not always easy, but like I remember when I was dating, I would always look for those butterflies, and I would chase that butterfly. And then when I met Marcus, it was like butterflies, but more like, hey, I like you, I think. You know, it was more of a stable state of attractiveness versus this insane roller coaster of emotions. And, you know, through all of our highs and lows, you know, that connection stays consistent. And I think one of the darkest times we've had to deal with was we were struggling to get pregnant. And, you know, when I got sober, I just assumed good things. Like, I knew people would die, but nobody really prepped me for what happens when my goals don't happen, like getting pregnant, starting a family. So that was some shit. But we came out of it together, and, you know, I learned a lot about myself in that process. It was more about just, like, what happens to me mentally when I don't get my way. I'm blessed with an awesome support group that just calls me out and tells me like it is. And I will be struggling with what I think is the most profound problem. And they'll be like, yeah, you're not accepting it. Like, it's as simple as that. You're not accepting it. Yeah, but, like, don't you know how serious this is? Yeah, but
Get
just
you a little
accept
page
it.
417.
Right. So I'm still the problem today, and I think I've learned how to deal with some of my anxiety and lack of control through running and exercise, because I can control that for the most part. But I do that excessively too, and so sometimes my higher power will swoop in and give me an injury. I can't tell you how many stress fractures I've had. I ran on a broken foot once for a few weeks, and so I ran on a broken foot for a few weeks, which required a lot of ibuprofen use, because I was in a lot of pain. But I couldn't take narcotics because I don't take narcotics, and I gave myself ulcers from taking too much ibuprofen.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So like I know like I'm a diehard alcoholic, and I still get resentful that I am so basic about it, because I fit I fit all the check boxes, and my behaviors are just exactly how it's outlined.
Just straight up
Yeah.
textbook.
Right.
Textbook.
I mean,
Yeah.
same, but yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And I get mad about it because I want to be different.
Right.
And I want to validate going off course, you know, trying something different. But what I'm doing today is working, and one day at a time. I'm still sober today. So I guess I'll just keep doing what I've been doing.
Hey, Mental Defectives.
Would you like to advertise on our podcast?
If so, email us at mentaldefectivespodcast@gmail.com.
So we can help you make a lot of money.
A whole lot of money. What advice would you have for someone getting into nursing?
Oh, okay. Don't steal the drugs.
Number 1. Don't do that.
Don't steal the drugs. Don't hurt the patients. Exercise when you get off if you have to relieve stress. No, seriously, it is a great profession, because like I'm a nurse and I'm not taking care of patients right now, but I could tomorrow if I wanted to. So there's just so many options. And there's a lot of good school programs out there. I went the 4-year route, but there's a lot of technical programs that wouldn't cost so much. And a lot of employers, if you get your LPN, they will put you through school to get your RN, and pay for it
where
for
the
you.
real money's at. Is the RN is the big.
There is like different levels. So like an LPN and then an RN, and then the BSN is bullshit
Big
nurse.
shit nurse.
Yeah.
Oh,
Big shit
okay,
nurse.
okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
I like your option better. Oh, yeah. So, and then, but there's ways to do it and not outright pay for a 4-year degree.
Nice.
I
Hell
just paid off my student loans like last year. So,
Nice.
yeah.
Nice.
Hell yeah.
What advice would you have for somebody trying to get sober or newly sober?
Quit listening to yourself. Quit listening to yourself, and you're not that different. I say that lovingly, and I actually I have a brother who struggles with mental illness, and I just wish his problem could be addiction, you know, because we have a solution.
Right.
We have a solution, and oftentimes it's free, you know, with the right people involved, and we just have more resources available easier to us. But I've been working on my codependency and acceptance, and you know, there's not one size fits all answer to sobriety or mental illness, but at the end of the day, I think the one common denominator we all have is we're all trying to kill ourselves. So shut up and quit listening to yourself and ask for help.
There it is.
I like it. I like it.
You know, I was thinking on the way here, because we kind of have like a don't just look the other way kind of mindset in society. And I don't know why I was thinking about that, but I've been able to connect with a lot of people on some really deep shit lately because I asked, because I didn't look the other way. And if you're struggling to get sober, you know, maybe it doesn't work in reverse, but I promise if you just put yourself out there and say something, somebody will say something back.
Solid.
Hell yeah.
Solid.
Well, Jessica, thank you so much for coming on. You crushed, as I knew you would. And then last thing before we get out of here, you were quoted as saying Tom Brady's the most overrated quarterback of all time. He's absolute trash and couldn't throw his way out of a garbage can. What did you mean by that? Even though he won 7 Super Bowls, what do you mean by that?
Matt?
It's the Mental Defectives podcast. It's Milligram, Jerry with a G. Jessica, thank you so much again for coming on. We appreciate it. We'll see you next time. Peace.
Thank you.